Hi, my name is Roy Collin and welcome to the show. I've also got five podcasts: The Awakening Podcast, exposing fraud and corruption, but with solutions; the Crypto Podcast, talking about all things blockchain, NFTs, crypto; the Meditation Podcast, talking about all different types of meditation, but there's also meditations there from 1 minute to 2 hours. And the other one's the Learn Polish Podcast. So if you're interested in learning Polish, you can do that. And the other one is Speaking with Roy Collin. And I just have guests from around the world talking about either public speaking or also about their book or just general life in general. And you find everything on bio.link/podcaster. I'm also a podcasting coach. And you see the QR code there, and it's also on my link as well. And if you're interested in actually going on some podcast shows, I'm helping people doing that. Or if you're interested in sponsorship, you can contact me. And I'd like to thank my sponsor, DanielPacker.com. He helps people with anxiety, stress, and addictions. He's got a 90% success rate, and you only pay if you're successful. So be sure to check him out, DanielPacker.com. I hope you enjoy this week's show. Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. My guest today, he's a new author and solopreneur of Man Up, Sober Up from Florida in the USA. Please welcome Ryan Penley.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. So, I mean, Man Up, Sober Up, it kind of does what it says on the tin, but I want to know a little bit more about Ryan. You might let the listeners know.
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer in that if you solve difficult problems in this world, I think it's your responsibility to reach out, help other people that are having the same problems that you've found some success with. You know, I don't claim to be an expert. I'm no doctor, but I learned a few things in my journey. I've recorded it in this book, right? So the book is a mixture of stories about how dark things got, homelessness. I was in a coma, things like that, hopefully people aren't familiar with, but I do know that some people are familiar with. So it can resonate with some of the readers to know that there are people, they're not alone, and there are people that understand, right? And then the other portion of the book is the tactics, right? It's the methods that I kind of use to start getting to work and then finding a way off the bottom, the rock bottom floor,
So I suppose let's go back to the younger Ryan. How did this all start? Did you start drinking younger, or what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, I mean, I started drinking a little bit early. I would say that the linchpin, though, for when things really got out of control is I was a part of that whole opioid epidemic situation, right? So they started prescribing me pills that it was copious amounts. I say now lightly that it was enough to kill a rhinoceros, and so here I am, nearly instantaneous addict. And then I had already had a family history of alcoholism. So, you pair those things up, man, that's a recipe for disaster, right? So, at an early age, I was what I felt like functional, right? That kind of a term, that approach. But before I knew it, it was like, boom, I'm looking around and I'm like, what the hell happened? So, the early stages, I feel looking back that it snuck up on me.
Like, was there with your own parents, was there an alcoholic in the household as well, or was it
Oh,
kind of relationship?
yeah, there's a pretty dark story in my book about my mother. She's still struggling uh, with pills and booze, and her and I were both using, and she sent me to jail. She accused me of trying to murder her, and the story gets into it, and obviously things panned out over time, but it was a really dark moment. And I still I think about what it would be like if she were to reach out, call me today and say, hey, I need help. That's a pretty far off, that's a distant reality. However, it's been, to answer your question, it's been in the family. It's a part of the history. And so separating myself from that will be a legacy, at least my own legacy to kind of break that chain, to separate my bloodline from addiction and alcoholism is something that I'm focused on. Yeah.
And I mean, my own experience, like where I grew up in a kind of rough neighborhood, and I saw a load of the parents were alcoholics. And what I see is with the children that they either totally against it or they become alcoholics themselves. And just from your own journey, is there a way now that you know what you're doing, that you've overcome this, that is there any kind of advice you could give people that are kind of on the fence? Because it's a dangerous place to be. Because, like, in reality, that's the time that the state should jump in and kind of be there to help people, but they don't. It's like they encourage this.
Well, this what you're touching on here really brings me back to this story, and forgive me for not knowing exactly where I remember it from, but there's two very different men, brothers, and I think in the story they're twins, but one was incredibly successful and one was an alcoholic, an addict, abusive. And so they were both asked, well, how did you get here? Just much like the question you just asked me, like, how did I get here? So the brother that was successful, massively successful, he says, oh man, it was my father. He was an alcoholic and he beat us when we were younger. And, I use that as my fuel and part of the reason why I reach out and I strive to be successful. They asked the brother who was abusive the same question. His answer was exactly the same. My father was abusive. My father used alcohol. My father did this. So you see, they framed it. It's the framing, right? So you can either use that as a part of your fuel or motivation to get away from it, or you can let it destroy you and you can follow the same suit. And as you mentioned, there's people that do both. So I think the imperative element is, how do you look at it? How do you frame it? And so I'm always letting people know that, like, in the trenches, like, while you're dealing with it, it doesn't seem like there's any way to look at it other than, well, this is pretty crappy. This is an awful situation, and objectively it might be so. However, you can use it. You can use these circumstances as a launch pad, for becoming better, right? So it's really about how you view your obstacles, and then, yeah, man, hard decisions, man. So yeah, I would say framing it is what it's all about.
The opioids then, because I mean I've seen a few shows on it, but I've heard about, just it was orchestrated as well, unfortunately. Was it something that you just saw was the kind of going trend and got into it, or had you an injury, a pain, and it was prescribed and then it's like it kind of spiraled from there?
That's interesting. Now that you ask me that question, I realize that that's not in the book. I didn't even write about it. It's coming back to me. And I mean, I had dabbled, like, in the party culture with prescription pills, and then I did have an injury, and I broke my leg. I compound fracture of my leg, so I've got a bunch of titanium in there, and I mean, right away, the doctor prescribed me 220 30 milligram roxycodones. I mean, and anybody that knows anything about it, that is a lot of medication. So, and they sent a nurse to my house and everything. She was showing me how to crush them up so I could get them into my digestive system faster. And I remember my friend tells the story. He says, man, I remember your eyes lit up. And I was an addict. Boom, I was an addict. Like, just, I mean, it hit me and I was like, oh, this is euphoria. And it was. I mean, that's what that was. That's what drugs do, right? So boom, I mean, just like that. Yeah, I mean, there's no need for anybody to be on that level of medication, and there I was, and I did all that for, like, it was like $5. I mean, I was, for a person, that has a built-in excuse like that, and people would look at me and I'm clearly high, and they would look at me and they'd say, and I'd say, well, I need this. This is my medicine. No way, man. Yeah, so it was unfortunate. However, I don't blame the doctor. I mean, I was still the one that put it into my body, But yeah, it was that.
I
That was
would
a situation.
actually, I would blame the doctor because of the kickbacks that I've kind of researched and seen and everything, and the whole thing is orchestrated. And even when they know it, they just keep doing it. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
like the reality is, if you're in pain, you want something to resolve it. So I've never actually tried that. I'm just wondering, how long does it last for the lift, and then what's the come down like for those that wouldn't have
Yeah.
ever used it?
Yeah. So that's uh so eventually, I guess I'm starting from the end and working backwards. My life turned into a 4 hour window, right? I would sleep for no more than 4 hours. I would plan out about 4 hours ahead of time. I didn't think about any damn thing in my life, anything further than that time and than that window of 4 hours. And why was that? Because that's how long my high was. That's how long my high was. And then once, so it's like, okay, well, I take the pills, I'm high, now I can do something. Then the high starts to wear off at around 4 hours or something like that. Well, now the only mission in my life at that point is to get more drugs, right? Is to get more high. And this also applies for alcohol. It was the same scenario. So my entire depth of time perception shrunk to 4 hours biologically and psychologically. Like I didn't think further than 4 hours ahead, and my body would start to I guess you could say withdrawals, but I would be either less high or going through withdrawals after 4 hours. So everything shrunk to that amount of time, right? So, and then eventually, of course, as addicts know, like you're not even getting high anymore at a certain threshold. You're just maintaining, right? So it's like I wasn't even getting high. I was just trying to make it through the day. And so, yeah, I would say that would, if you were going to put a time stamp on it, 4 hours is the stamp.
And like, what was it like people around you then when you were actually doing that? Were you annoyed? Just because I remember being at an event and there was people that were doing coke. I don't do coke. I've never done coke, but they were annoying, to be honest with you. And I just kind of got away. It's like just motor mouthing and just like as if I'm the energy. And I was like, this is so annoying. I just got away from the person. Is it similar that people kind of, you think you're the life of the party, but the reality is those that aren't using kind of go, they want, it's like a magnet. They're kind of being pushed away from you.
Yeah, that's I mean, yeah, and I could see that scenario. It's like the one, if you're the one guy, if you're doing it alone, that's a huge marker that you got a problem. And I've been around these people and it's like, they're sweating, they're grinding their teeth, they're talking inappropriately at different times and it's like, oh man, like you're way off, you're way off. And so for myself, my very specific situation, I had a lot of people that cared for me, and it would just became sad. It was like, oh man, here's this, it's like they kind of remembered who I was and they saw what had become. And it was like, damn, like, he's not speaking clearly again, and that's where it eventually led up to. But drug use and alcoholism, man, it's selfish. I was thinking very little about other people's perceptions of me. I didn't give a damn what they thought. I felt great. I felt like awesome. Oh, this is amazing. And so, getting into the social situations, I can say the very worst part about it was people's perception of me being like useless and a liability. That's how I eventually, it was like people were just like, oh great, he's here, he's either going to cause a problem or he's not going to bring anything to the scenario. I'm not adding any value, I'm not having wise conversations, I'm not even being funny. It's like just sad, so that's the darkness, that's the darkest that it gets, to be honest with you.
Because I believe you were, is it 11 years you were working in a bar in Vegas?
Yeah.
So, I
Great.
mean,
Yeah.
like if you look at, like somebody goes to Thailand to a monastery, they create something like Vegas with the energy zap of all the electricity and all the stuff and just the people surrounding it. You're kind of putting yourself in the wrong. So I'd love to know your life, the way, what made you go there and how your daily life was when you were in Vegas.
Yeah, it's not all bad. I'm going to say right now, it was not all bad. I'll tell you something about Las Vegas. It's got more national parks within 100 miles than any other city in the US. So it wasn't all bad. It's not all cocaine and prostitutes. Although, if you want cocaine and prostitutes, that is there. But, I did a lot of hiking, a lot of snowboarding, but also this is the cocaine and the prostitutes. So I mean, and not that I was in this every night. It's just like it's that that level of like it's almost like Sodom and Gomorrah, right? It's like that's where you go if you want to get into that stuff. And here I am, I'm dead center. I was bartending on the strip. I mean, anybody looking for that kind of hedonistic behavior, I mean, I'm right in the middle of it. And that was my 9 to 5, I mean, it was actually more like 7 to 3 or 4 in the morning, So here I am. I'm in the center of where people come to do hedonistic things. So my life would be, during the day, I would hike, I'd go to the Red Rock Canyon, I'd trail run. And this is how I maintained a balance for a while. This is how I managed to be an addict. Like I said, functional, if you want to call it that, is that I would try to get some physical activity, and then I'd go to work, and then I was just knee deep in the muck, and so what brought me out there was, it was for the time being at my age, I was 21 at the time, and it was a financial opportunity. If you're gonna bartend anywhere in the world, that's the place to do it. It's the pinnacle. And that's what I did. And I went out there, and so for a while, I did have a balance, and it wasn't all horrible. And then I would say, well, not just me, but people closest to me say that, like, once I had the injury to the leg, boom, it was done. Those pills it was a hard left turn, and it was several years before I found my way back to the path.
Oh, when you went into the coma, then you might just kind of tell me how that all came about.
Right. So then, sometimes when I get into these stories, it's a lot of them. So I needed out of Vegas. I needed out. Right. I said, well, I got to get the hell out of here. I left my house. I left every belonging I had. I was in a relationship, left that relationship, and I thought this is going to be my solution. I was going to get a new environment, and it was all going to be better. And so I went to Colorado. I'm in Estes Park, and things didn't get better. Things got worse. Why? Because I brought all of it with me. I brought all of these tendencies. I brought my attitude. I brought all of that with me. This is pretty much the only thing I brought with me was my problems. So I get to Colorado, and I start in again. I start drinking. I start, and now I'm away from the pills, but now it's Coke, it's meth, it's whatever I could find, and I'm selling whiskey there. Right, I'm a whiskey, I guess, like a sommelier for whiskey, and I'm up there selling high-end whiskey, and I'm doing well financially. However, physically, I start to break down, and I end up going to the hospital one time up there. Small town, 6,000 people, tiny town. And so I go to the hospital, and of course, everybody knows everybody. The doctor had come to my bar and, ate often. He tells me, he's like, "You're diabetic." And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? I'm diabetic. Like, get out of here, man. And he said, "No, I ran the test. I'm pretty sure you're diabetic." And then from that conversation, I mean, fast forward probably about 2 months later, I went into a diabetic coma. My body temperature went down to 85 degrees, and I had begun to die. I defecated myself. I threw up on myself, and a friend of mine thought I hadn't. He's like, I hadn't seen him do any drugs. I don't know what's going on. So once the paramedics found me, they airlifted me to a town, because the town I was in was so small. They didn't have the ability to treat me. So they took me on a helicopter, got me to a town with triage. And 7 days later, I wake up out of the coma, and God willing, I had people around me that cared, and I don't even know if I would have come out if these people had not been there in that room. But I did. I came out unscathed. I don't believe I have any mental or inabilities as far as or repercussions from the coma. Physically, I'm all right, I guess. I mean, I'm still diabetic, but yeah, that coma was interesting. And then people say, "Oh, well, that was when you turned it around, right? You snapped out of it." Not even close. Came back to Florida. It was another 4 years, and things got worse than that. So the coma actually wasn't the peak. I went way, 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 way deeper. And at that point, it was mostly alcoholism because I couldn't find drugs anymore. And so, yeah, then that's how I ended up back in Florida. And here I am. It took a while to really gain traction. If people look at this book or they look at me now and they think, oh man, yeah, it was just this, you stopped on a dime and turned it all around. And that couldn't be anything further than the truth. The truth was it was a series of hard battles with some small wins that turned into larger wins. And then eventually, if you get that formula right, you start winning, right?
With the coma, because you hear some people kind of saying they knew everything that was going on, they could hear all the conversations. Have you any recollection of when you were in the coma?
Yeah, that's such a great question, man. Because yeah, there was some people that wanted to know that same thing, and I'm in the hospital. They're kind of watching me as I'm kind of getting my mental clarity back, and there's a dear friend of mine. She showed up with a notepad, and she was like, "Okay, tell me what you saw." And she was just hell bent on my story, and there wasn't much. It wasn't vivid. I can tell you that it wasn't vivid at all. But I believe looking back, uh, again, like I had mentioned, like the energy. There was people in that room that cared about me, and looking back now, I'm confident that there's a purpose, right? And it wasn't so clear. It wasn't just like people were telling me like, "Oh, you're here for a reason. You're here for a reason," and I didn't listen. And it took me some time before that became clear. But there wasn't an out of body experience or anything like that. And I would say when I did come out of it, though, the realization about where I was at, I mean, I was about 60 pounds lighter than I am now. So, I mean, I was so skinny, the verge of death there, that it was a wild awakening, both literally and figuratively, right? Yeah.
With because you mentioned like you were diagnosed as being diabetic, but then you kept drinking. And I just know from somebody that back in Ireland that like there's a high danger of actually losing your sight when you're drinking and you're diabetic. Is that something you were aware of?
I didn't care. I didn't care. I mean, there was no shortage of people along the way that they said you're gonna die if you keep this going. It wasn't even the sight, or of course there's repercussions for not treating diabetes. You can lose limbs, you can lose toes, you can lose your sight. It can be very debilitating. When you're talking to an addict or an alcoholic, they don't give a shit, man. Like I didn't care. It was like, oh, you want me to worry about my eyesight. You want me to worry about my monitoring my blood glucose levels. I got things to do. And that involves getting drunk and forgetting about all the things you're telling me about. This is my response to doctors. I would basically just say, okay, and just one ear out the other, on about my business. And that business at the time was, destroy myself. So, yeah.
What was that pinnacle moment that kind of made you decide, I need to change this?
Yeah, I think the knowledge that I needed to change, it had been there for a while. Uh, what set? I wouldn't say it was the awareness of that I needed to get better. It was the desperation uh, to find a solution. And so that sounds very dark. Instead of saying like, instead of implementing this moment of hope, it was more of like, I was desperate and I wasn't going anywhere. I made up in my mind that I was like, I'm ready to check out here, like what am I doing? I'm ready to go. And God did not have the same plans. And so when I'm looking around, I'm like, well, all right, I'm still here. So like, well, now what do I do? And so when everything falls apart and you're looking around and you're thinking to yourself, okay, it's completely tumbled. It's completely uh, shattered into so many pieces. It's like, okay, well, what do you do then? You get to work. It's like, okay, I'm desperate. I need a solution. And I started gaining some traction, man. And that traction was small. Like I would say, you know, like I had mentioned earlier about the framework about having addiction and alcoholism in your family, and the solution there is like framing it, yeah. But that's a high level course of action, is framing things. So if you need to get simple, you need to start small and simple. And so what I started with, and I failed many times, was 15 minutes. I would tell myself, you're not going to touch that bottle for 15 minutes. And I would fail. I would fail. Like I would, the wheels would fall off. I'd drink the whole damn thing, passed out, all in 10 minutes. And it was that experience is very disturbing, and it's far from encouraging. However, you know, that 15 minutes turned into an hour, and that hour turned into two, which turns into a day, turns into a week. And that's the formula, right? It's so hard for people to stretch out that far. Like I had mentioned, the 4 hours is that was a very strong threshold of what I could grasp mentally for so long. However, eventually it snowballs, and that influence, that winning feeling, the results, all of it becomes exponential. But you have to shrink it to a manageable level. That's the name of the game.
You've got like this free 21-day sobriety and fitness challenge, which I think that kind of came from that you realized that you build it. So you might tell us exactly what that entails.
Yeah, it's an effort of mine to really package up what I've been going on about here. Is it's for somebody who doesn't know where to begin, but they think to themselves, I could be either more sober or entirely sober, even if you're flirting with the idea, or if you're desperate. Both are touched upon in this program. It's not too intensive. It's a very laxed, self-paced program that somebody can kind of just like dip their toes in. But it's something that addicts and people that want to be better can grasp. And so my idea throughout the entire thing is to get the win. So it's when I use the word challenge, it's to get people's attention, but it's more of like a solid win in the right direction for both sobriety and fitness. So you complete that challenge, you have now started winning, right? You complete that challenge, and now you're moving in the direction of both a sober lifestyle, if that's what you want, and then also becoming more physically fit, which I think coincides. I think that if you want to become more sober and be a more ideal version of yourself, then you're going to have to also get your body involved. I think that they're linked, and I think that when I was constructing this challenge, I needed both of those firing for people to have the best chances of success, right?
The reality is when you do train, you're getting rid of all the toxins, but you're breathing better as well. Because most people, they shallow breath. And when you breathe better, getting more oxygen in, you get a better thought process. And it's a big kind of chain reaction. Whereas most of the times people are trying to give up an addiction. That's what they do. They're going to a meeting and they're doing that. They're not doing the other things. So that's what I love what you're doing. You're kind of tackling it from both sides, but at the same time,
Yeah.
just that little feel good factor and just kind of reaching the next stage, which in turn goes, hey, I can do this, which gives you inspiration to keep going.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. So I feel like even now that I'm speaking to you, Roy, like I mean, maybe I could have come up with a different word than challenge. It's like, but how do how do you phrase it? It's like, hey, if you get involved with this, you're gonna see some progress, you know, and so that's my intention, like to give people that progress to move forward in both um, just getting some steps to an ideal future, right?
Have you done meetings as well, or do you just stick with your own system that you've done?
I, you know, I I see the AA meetings, right? That they're the king of the hill. They have the 12-step program, and that's saved a lot of people's lives. It really has. And that system has been around the longest. I mean, since people started having serious problems with alcohol, AA has been around, and it's done so much for um, uh, all societies when it comes to abuse of alcohol. And when I got involved in the programs, it didn't do too much for me personally. I didn't find as much. I didn't resonate as well with the program as others might have. I thought, hey, this is great what you guys are doing. The route that I chose was introspection and like spirituality. So I started really implementing a lot of parts of the program, like giving it up to a higher power. I've done that, right? Like I happen to be a Christian, but whatever it is that you choose as your deity or your religious organization, giving some of the responsibility to a higher power, which is in AA, right? Um, is imperative. It's imperative. It's imperative to like relieve some of that pressure, some of that guilt. And people that have been in that fight know that weight is unbearable, which is why a lot of people stay in that same cycle. So I have implemented several portions or elements of the AA program, not intentionally to steal from them, but it just works. These methods work, and so my formula for success will be different from another person's. And so whatever that combination looks like, that's what you got to dig into. It could be anything. Um, so the AA programs they're incredibly valuable, and a lot of people um, need that social interaction. And the way that I chose my social interaction was with the intimate relationships that I had around me that maybe I had tainted over the years. I dug into the ones instead of reaching out to gain new ones. I kind of focused that energy on the ones I already had or are ruined or like I said, tainted. So I started working on those because you're gonna need we all need social interaction. Like this is great what we're doing here. And so however you best find that is going to have to be a focus for anybody wanting to like make this happen.
I think as well, when you are rebuilding the relationships that you've damaged, I think it's more within you as well. It's not just obviously you're helping the person, making it nicer for them, but the feeling, the good factor that you've got yourself just by actually doing that is, you can't put a price to that. And I'm just curious because I remember when I was working in Ireland, there was one guy that I knew he was an alcoholic, and it's similar in Poland. And unfortunately, there's events that go on, whether it's Christmas parties, birthday parties, weddings, and stuff like that. and I saw that they could come in, but after an hour or two, they had to kind of leave. And I'm just curious, when you find yourself in that situation, and is there techniques for people not to kind of feel that, or are they better off just staying away from an event when, because I mean, I know that you can be 10 years off it and it can just happen. And, there's the risk factor. So I'm just kind of curious, what's the best way to navigate that one?
Well, when you first start out, finding that like for instance, I couldn't even walk past a liquor store. I knew if I went past a liquor store, I mean, it was like a time machine kicked in. It was like I knew it was there. I knew I couldn't go in. Somehow I made it in, purchased alcohol, went straight to a public bathroom, drank half the bottle, and I was drunk. And this all happened in like, man, it was like lightning. It was like 7 to 10 minute window. And I'm looking around, I'm like, I done it again. How the hell did this happen? So I couldn't even go near a liquor store. I mean, geographically, I'm talking within miles. If I knew a liquor store was on the crossroads of this road and this road, I would travel an extra 20 minutes around because I just couldn't do it. I could not be near it. So maybe that's social scenarios. Maybe you do need some distance. Um, but what I can attest to is that for myself, I thought it got easier. In fact, I was actually I do events now. I sell events, and I was at an event, and I actually got back and started bartending. I was bartending, and here I am. I mean, alcohol is 6 inches from my mouth. I'm pouring it in drinks. I'm serving it, and it never crossed my mind. It never crossed. It didn't even. It wasn't even a thought. Now I was very busy. I was trying to help out the event. It was a very busy event, and so here I am in that scenario. If that had been me 3 years ago, there's no way I would have ended up a puddle on the ground. So awareness is key, right? If oh man, if I go into that scenario, I don't feel confident that I can go through and not give into temptation. And so then the solution is to stay the hell away. And I had to do that. Like I had to stay away from parties. I had to stay away from friends that were partaking for some time, you know. And then, maybe the solution for somebody is to find a whole new group of friends and a whole new environment where it's just not even existent. And that's not a bad tactic. For me, I wanted those relationships back with those people. Those people meant a lot to me. And I couldn't make them stop or do it. And nor it's their business. So, but I wanted them back in my life. So I knew I had to create enough resilience in myself, enough strength that I could not give in. And it wasn't instantaneous. I worked on that strength over time. And that's what it is. Like I said, like I built it. Like I was a little bit stronger. I was a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger. And then now, I mean, I couldn't believe, after I got done bartending, and this is just a few weeks ago, I thought to myself, I'm damn. And even a friend of mine pointed out, he's like, man, you're back there. You're covered in alcohol. It's splashing everywhere. And like, you don't, nothing. And I said, nah, man, it's a wild thing that I've gotten to this point, and it wasn't always at this point. So, yeah, whatever works. And if you have to abstain and stay away at that phase, do it. Stay the hell away. I mean, I look at people and I wonder, like, a bartender, if you're bartending professionally and you're struggling with alcoholism, you might want to get the hell out of that profession, right? Like, I think it would be wise, because, you're just throwing yourself in the devil's den,
Just finally, Ryan, like, I mean, obviously, I love your mission, what you're doing, writing the book to help others. So you've obviously, I'm assuming you've kind of seen or helped somebody else that has gone through this, and just how that feels for you, knowing that just that little ripple effect is beginning.
Yeah. It, if you look up the definition of vocation, right? And this is something, as I was gaining traction, I would pray about this a lot. I would ask for this a lot, is that, like, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And, vocation isn't necessarily about making some dollar amount. It's about operating with a purpose and for others. Well, I put in for others, but it's like you go and you do something that has more value than just money. And so I would focus on this, like, what am I supposed to be doing? So when my why came together, my why came in, and really I started seeing other people that were in pain. And I was like, I can help that person. So before I wrote the book, before I had any idea about what I was going to do, I was like, that's what I have to do. I have to help that person, and not only that person, but many people like that. So how do I get that done? And I worked that way. So then, the book came. It's a great way for people to access this help. But I haven't stopped there, and so the feeling of reaching out, visiting people in hospitals, speaking at rehabs, facilities. In these conversations could be one-on-one, or they could be one with many. You never know when you're going to resonate with somebody. You never know they're going to look at you, and there's going to be a click in there. And that you cannot plan that. You can't sell that. You can attempt to try, because you never know when it's going to come. You never know when it's going to come. So the feeling that when I see somebody's eyes that they've had either, whatever you want to call it, an aha moment, or oh, that's useful, I might try that. It's like, and maybe it won't work, but they're making moves. And so, and like I said, even with the challenges, like, just get going in the right direction. So that's really what I want to do, is I want to reach back, either pull, or sometimes pull isn't the right word, but like nudge, get people moving towards becoming better. And yeah, that's a noble cause. And in my mind, it's my cause, right? So it's my why, and it's become my purpose. And now I'm looking to kind of make a business out of it, not to really gain financial, not to make money, but so I can perpetuate it. That's the name of the game. And so if I can make this my profession, then I can perpetuate my help. And so that's what I'm doing. And nothing feels better than that.
Excellent. I love it. I love it. Listen, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, Ryan. You might let people know how they can find you.
Yeah, I've got a website, ryanpenley.org. You can find me on Facebook, My Rock Bottom Recovery. So that's my Facebook handle. You can find the challenge on myrockbottomrecovery.com. And then the book is Man Up, Sober Up. You can get it on Amazon. It's $10. I actually have the ebook coming out in 2 days. Right. So on the 17th, the ebook version is 99 cents. Like I said, I've got a few different ways that I'm attempting to give back and reach out to people working on their sobriety and trying to get better in life.
Excellent. Well, I wish the book and the audio super success. Well, I don't know. Are you actually doing the audio? Are you going to do an audio and do it yourself with the book?
Yeah, that's that's the next progression. That's the next progression. So I know that when anybody that's experienced authorship, I know you're an author, and it's like when you're doing a book, there's a lot of elements. And if you're firing on all cylinders, then you're going to have the ebook available, at a lower price point. You got the hardcover, it's a few extra dollars for the fancy packaging, right? And then you got the audio book for people on the go and in the car. So the audio book is probably going to be the next phase.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll make sure I'll put all the links of all your social and the books, both on the audio and the video. And I love your mission, and I wish you super success with the book and also the business, which in turn is going to help a lot of people. So thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you very much, man.
No problem.
Have a good one, Roy.
Thank you very much. That's all for the Speaking Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. Until next week, take care. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, and share with your friends. And you'll find all my shows with the QR code or bio.link/podcaster, as well as my podcast coaching. And I'd like to thank my sponsor, danielpacker.com, helping people with anxiety, stress, and addictions. He's got a 90% success rate, and you only pay if you're successful. Also, if you'd like to go on a podcasting tour, I can help you do that. And if you're interested in sponsorship, you can contact me on my bio.link/podcaster. Until next week, take care.